Hey everyone, I am Bold Explorer, and this is the Ishtar Gate from my Daniel 1 AI video. It's the most famous image of ancient Babylon. It's traditionally cobalt blue glazed brick, and it's the Babylon we all picture. However, in the film that I created, it is tan and not colored blue or anything unglazed, and that was on purpose because of something scientists figured out just 2 years ago. So in 2024, researchers sampled bricks from the actual gate and dated them using Earth's magnetic field and came up with around 569 BC that the blue was added to the actual structure. So Daniel arrived in 605 BC. So when Daniel walked into Babylon, the blue gate didn't exist yet. It was this unglazed version, possibly still under construction. Isn't that wild? So nobody could have known that until recently. So this video I'm creating today is about the historicity of Daniel 1 AI film that I created earlier, and the discoveries that surprised me as I was making it, the choices that I was forced to make, and some of the open questions that the text still leaves me with. So I made this film of Daniel chapter 1, linked in the description. Every AI shot that I generated was researched first, and I did some Claude deep research to do some extra digging. And then every claim has a source. They're all linked in the description. You can see my full source list that I've got in the website there. So check it out in the description below. And if the source, or if my production rule was that if the source didn't check out, I cut any claim from the video as much as possible. I'm not perfect, but I try my best to be historically accurate. So in 605 BC, Nebuchadnezzar had been king for a few weeks. And the Babylon of legend, the baked brick, the glaze, the gold, that's his 43-year building campaign, and it's just beginning at this point. So my Babylon is a construction site, and with scaffolding, kiln smoke, half-finished walls, and that's not, that was done on purpose. That's the archaeology of the day for when Daniel was arriving into Babylon at that time. Here's the one that surprised me a little bit. No marble, no stone columns. Southern Iraq has essentially no building stone at all. So that Babylon was mud brick set in bitumen, natural asphalt, hundreds of millions of bricks. So that's why you don't see any like stone columns and stuff. The columns in white stone we associate with the ancient world belonged to Greece and Rome. Babylon's grandeur was brick and tar, which is stranger and honestly more honest for the time that and the archaeology. So now the king Nebuchadnezzar, most of us might have pictured an old man with a beard, like a gray beard. However, during this time when Daniel arrived, he was young. He was in his 30s. He was crowned a few weeks after winning one of the biggest battles of the ancient world. So I depicted him as a young warrior king because that's who he actually was on the throne at that time. Now we're not guessing what he looked like actually, because there are some reliefs of him or some images of him that survived. So one was a stone stele, shows him with a curled beard and a long royal robe, a cone-shaped crown, and a tall staff. The lion on the head of the staff was a little extra. Could have been a lion, but might not have been. That's the stele that stele that we see of him, though, was based how he designed the character for my film. So that step tower on the skyline is Etemenanki, the historical Tower of Babel. I probably butchered saying that, but it's my best understanding of how to pronounce that. The base is confirmed by excavation is 91 meters square, and the height, scholars argue about the height, but it's somewhere around 54 and 91 meters, something like that. Either way, it owned the skyline at that time, and it was definitely the first thing an exile would have seen rising out of the haze. My favorite source in the whole film, the costumes were carved in stone 2,700 years ago. the Lachish reliefs, Assyrian palace art, showing Judean families marched into deportation, showed them wearing fringed tunics, head wraps, bundles, ox carts. And so when you watch the film that I created, you're essentially watching that come alive, which is pretty cool. So one panel also even shows the captive musicians marched under guard, and the British Museum itself connects it to Psalm 137. They required of us a song. My film opens with that. And I didn't know that relief existed when I chose the psalm. Finding it afterward was a really fun point of this project. So another surprise that surprised me as well, that the caravan had no camels in it, because in this period and place, the everyday pack animal was the donkey, and heavy loads were driven by oxes or put on ox carts. The exiles also took the long road up through Syria down the Euphrates, hard upland road, not dunes. So the ox carts aren't a guess. They're right there on the Lachish panels, carrying the deportees bundles in history. So Daniel's classroom. So Daniel's classroom, as you notice, not one scroll is in it. You can see these baskets along the side with the cuneiform tablets. The literature the Chaldeans had to use was historically using cuneiform on clay tablets. So you press a reed into damp clay, you don't write, you stamp the lettering. This was very difficult to get right with AI video. Obviously, it's very challenging to depict correctly, but I did my best, and you got what you got. So the clay sheep's liver the teacher holds up is a real object class. It's a sheep's liver, not a human liver, but there's a famous one in the British Museum. Diviners read the future in livers at that time, and they trained on inscribed clay models. Every square explains an omen. So Daniel's classmates were studying that exact for that exact job, and the magicians and enchanters the king calls in chapter 2. So we showed a little picture of that learning taking place. So the whole premise, the foreign boys raised and trained at the king's court, is documented practice in the king's own words. So Sennacherib says, of Babylonian noble grew up in my palace like a young hound, his inscription, not my script. And Ashurbanipal brags about his homework, obscure languages, mathematics, and omens. That's Daniel's curriculum in a king's own voice. So that's pretty cool that we have some small record of what Daniel might have studied at that time. So this scene is where archaeology touches the Bible almost physically. Excavators found ration tablets inside Nebuchadnezzar's palace complex that oil and barley issued from the royal stores. 4 of them named Jehoiachin, king of Judah, and his sons. The king of Judah is on Babylon's payroll records. Interesting. So the king assigned them a daily portion. Daniel 1:5, it as an accounting document, is actually historically verifiable there. It's really cool to see that take place in the video. So why refuse the food? It was not necessarily kosher rules, because the Hebrew word Daniel uses isn't the technical unclean term. The king's table was supplied through the idol cult, and food went through the gods first, which then came down to them later, which is why my film shows the platters at the shrine before they ever reached the boys. So there's no direct proof that this specific food was offered to the idols. It's the most likely reading, though, of the passage. So grooming is the language in this world. The curled, oiled beard means free adult male at that time in Babylon. Court officials are drawn beardless. That's why Ashpenaz is smooth-faced. This character here on screen We didn't officially name him in the video, but he's supposed to be Ashpenaz. It's iconography, not a casting accident, that he doesn't have a beard because he is not free. He was a court official eunuch. Priests shaved everything, head and face, 3 grooming codes, 3 social classes, all readable on the reliefs of the time. So a couple rapid fire observations. There's no forks. Metallurgy is 1500 years in the future. There's no kippas. That practice comes much later for the Judean boys there. Head wrappings or nothing on their head. They drank beer through reed straws, sesame oil lamps, cedar beams from Lebanon. The king brags about them himself. And then every Babylonian man carried a seal. Herodotus says so, that the steward's cylinder seal on its cord, that's why he was carrying that in the film. So the one question that I'm not completely sure about here, there could be many open questions with this, but one of the biggest, in my opinion, is Daniel having a beard at the end of the film. So this was the norm for Judean men, and it was considered a humiliation to have your beard forcibly shaved. Isaiah prophesied that Judah's sons would serve as eunuchs in the palace of the king of Babylon, though. And the court officials in Babylonian art are drawn beardless. So Josephus read Daniel that way, that since he was part of the Babylonian court, as a magician or enchanter, he would have possibly been beardless as well. But Daniel's title holder had come to mean chief court official. And chapter 1 requires that the youths be without blemish. So some scholars disagree that perhaps they weren't made eunuchs. There's no clear consensus on whether or not he would have had a beard. If he was a eunuch, then probably not have a beard. So Daniel is shown with a beard at the end here. It's never oiled or curved, but it's like a Judean traditional beard that keeps his people's norm and declines the court fashion. So this is the most honest answer I could give you as to whether or not the beard at the end is historically accurate. So one thing we definitely dramatized in this film is that everyone speaks English. Obviously, that's not the case. Historically, it's Akkadian at court and Aramaic in the streets, and then Hebrew at home for the Jewish captives. The description says that out loud in the description. You can read it, that we had just made that way for accessibility purposes. And if I find real mistakes across the 12 chapters, I'll definitely go in and note them in the descriptions. So as I go with this, I'm not perfect, but I'm just trying the best I can to make the film as accurate as I possibly can as I'm doing this research and making these, because I really wanted to create some video depictions of biblical times that were as close to the text as I could get. That's my goal. So yeah, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate all the thoughts and questions and everyone's comments. Thank you so much. I hope to produce more of these, so keep on the lookout. Bye.